She tried to destroy my career over a chair I didn't stand on. 3 years of loyalty gone in a flash because the CEO's wife mistook poise for defiance. What didn't she know? I was the one who built the empire she was pretending to lead. And when she came for me, I didn't just took everything she thought was hers. My name is Reese Patterson, and on March 15th, I discovered that 3 years of loyalty meant absolutely nothing when measured against one woman's wounded pride. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. I was in my office, organizing client files like I always did before the day kicked off. Something was soothing about setting things in order before the storm of emails, meetings, and market reports rolled in. I had just filed away the last quarterly summary when the door burst open so hard it slammed against the wall. Evangeline Beaumont stood in the doorway like a hurricane wrapped in designer rage. Her stiletto Louboutins clicked menacingly on the polished floor, and her manicured hand, weighted down by diamond rings, shot forward, pointing directly at me. "You will be terminated today," she spat, her voice thick with venom, my mouth open slightly, confused. "Excuse me, last night at the Children's Hospital charity gala," she hissed, advancing into my space like a predator circling prey, "you deliberately disrespected me. When I approached your table, you remained seated like some kind of peasant." I blinked. That was it. Was that the crime I was about to lose my entire career over? She wasn't done. "My husband will hear about this immediately," she snarled, her emerald eyes burning with fury. "You'll be clearing out your desk before lunch." My chest tightened as the gravity of what she was saying landed. I was about to be fired, because I hadn't stood up fast enough, because I hadn't performed some meaningless display of deference. 3 years. 3 years of building the international division from 2 clients to 47. 3 years of working late nights, missing family dinners, and pouring every ounce of myself into this company. All of it is about to be destroyed because Evangeline Beaumont felt slighted. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had someone try to destroy your career over something completely ridiculous? Because what happened after that moment in my office, what happened in the days that followed, was the most satisfying revenge I've ever witnessed. And you need to hear every single detail. Let me take you back to how this all began. 8 months earlier, I was drowning in student loan debt. My salary was decent, but the payments were relentless, and I needed extra income just to keep up. One evening, I found myself browsing freelance tutoring websites. With my degree in international business and my specialization in Mandarin Chinese, I figured I could offer language tutoring to students or business professionals. That's when I found the listing on Elite Academic Services, an exclusive tutoring platform for high-net-worth clients. The ad was vague but intriguing. Someone needed intensive Mandarin lessons twice weekly at their private residence. The pay was outrageous, $300 per session. There was no name, just an address in one of the most luxurious parts of the city. And 3 specific requirements: complete discretion, professional appearance, and absolute confidentiality. I applied, using my maiden name Reese Morgan instead of my married name, which was on all my work documents. I styled my hair differently, wore glasses I didn't usually need, and dressed far more conservatively than I did for the office. I knew wealthy clients preferred their staff to be invisible. Blend in, don't make waves. The penthouse was exactly what you'd imagine. Floor-to-ceiling windows, priceless art, and the kind of silence that only money could buy. That's where I met Herva, or so she introduced herself. She didn't say hello. "You're here to teach me Mandarin," she said flatly. "I need to be conversational in 6 months. Business meetings, contract negotiations, the whole thing. Can you do that, or should I find someone else?" I smiled politely. "Absolutely. What's your current level?" She waved her hand. "I know some words. Let's just start." 10 minutes into our first session, I knew she was a disaster. She mispronounced greetings, couldn't grasp the tonal system, and got visibly irritated when corrected. But she was determined. I'll give her that. Every lesson, she pushed herself harder. Unfortunately, she also treated me like the help. "Bring me coffee next time," she said after our second lesson. "And use the service entrance. I don't want the doorman seeing tutors come through the main lobby." I needed the money, so I smiled and nodded. $600 a week was worth swallowing my pride. As the weeks passed, I learned more about Ava's obsession. She was working on what she called the deal of a lifetime, a $50 million joint venture with Chinese investors. She'd been telling everyone she was fluent in Mandarin, that she'd studied it extensively, and that she was the perfect person to lead international negotiations. The irony was painful. Eva couldn't speak a coherent sentence. Every phrase had to be spelled out phonetically. Her grammar was non-existent, but she was spinning this fantasy where she was a brilliant international businesswoman. Meanwhile, I was living that reality at my day job. I spoke with clients in Beijing, negotiated contracts, and closed multi-million-dollar deals. I built our Asian market division from scratch, but Eva, whose real name I still didn't know, was pretending to be everything I was. The turning point came 6 weeks before the gala. We were practicing her investor pitch, and it was going terribly. She forgot basic terms, confused yes and no, and recited nonsense with a confident smile. "This isn't working," I said gently. "You need more practice." Her face turned red. "Are you saying I'm stupid?" "Not at all. Mandarin is incredibly difficult. Most people need years to reach business level fluency. I don't have years," she exploded. "This presentation is everything. It's my chance to prove I belong in the business world, not just as some trophy wife." For the first time, I saw a crack in the armor. Real fear, real desperation. And I felt pity. "We'll work extra sessions," I said. "I'll write out everything phonetically. You can memorize it word for word." She nodded, visibly relieved. "You can't tell anyone about this." "If people knew I was getting help, double quotes, of course not," I replied. Client confidentiality is sacred. The next month was brutal. I rewrote her entire presentation, created fallback phrases, and even coached her on how to bow correctly. She still treated me like hired help, but sometimes she'd offer me a drink or ask about my life. She even said thank you. "You're good at this," she said once. "You should work for a real company instead of tutoring." If only she knew. 2 weeks before her big pitch, she could finally recite the whole thing, not understand it, but perform it. "I'm going to be magnificent," she beamed. "This deal will change everything." I forced a smile. "You've worked hard. I'm sure it will go well." That's when she mentioned the gala. The children's hospital event. All the big names would be there. She couldn't wait to show off her language skills. My stomach dropped. My company, my real company, was a major sponsor. I would be there. At our corporate table, representing the international division. There was a chance Eva would recognize me, a slim one. I looked very different in my office attire. But still, I debated skipping the event. I should have trusted my instincts. The gala was stunning. Our table was up front, and I was seated with senior management and their spouses. I wore an elegant black gown, hair in an updo, no glasses. I looked nothing like the tutor Eva knew. Halfway through dinner, I spotted her. She was glowing in a silver gown, holding court at a table packed with elites, laughing, speaking animatedly, playing the part perfectly. Then I saw him, the man sitting beside her. The CEO of my company. Evangeline Beaumont wasn't just some client. She was the CEO's wife. Panic gripped me. I tried to stay invisible. When I left the table for the restroom, I prayed I wouldn't run into her. But fate had other plans. As I returned, she was walking directly toward me. I sat down quickly, staring at my plate. "Just keep walking. Don't notice me." A voice called across the table. One of my colleagues, Reese Patterson. I looked up instinctively. Our eyes met. 2 seconds. That's all it took. Confusion flickered across her face. She almost recognized me. Almost, but she kept walking. I thought I was safe. I was so incredibly wrong. When Evangeline Beaumont stormed out of my office after her tirade, she left behind a silence so thick it rang in my ears. I stood still, stunned, the weight of her words sinking in slowly, like water creeping beneath the door. A moment later, my boss, James Morrison, walked in. His face was a mask of conflict. "I'm sorry, Ree, I am," he said, closing the door behind him. "But I can't have this kind of drama at home." I stared at him. "You're firing me because I didn't stand up fast enough when your wife walked by at a gala." He sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. "It's not just that. She says you deliberately ignored her. That you humiliated her in front of important people. That's insane." I didn't even realize she was there until our eyes met for 2 seconds. He didn't look at me. He didn't have to. I already knew what was coming. Arguing with her will make things worse. "I'll make sure you get a generous severance, excellent references." Everything I had built, my reputation, my relationships with clients. My credibility, it was all crumbling because Evangeline Beaumont couldn't tolerate perceived disrespect, but I wasn't done, not yet. Before I go, I said calmly, there's something you should know about your wife's big presentation with the Chinese investors. He blinked. What? I walked to my desk and opened my email. I had recorded every tutoring session for my reference. Each one showed Evangeline failing to pronounce even the most basic words, begging me to rewrite scripts phonetically, and admitting she had no understanding of what she was saying. I sent James the folder. Check your email. His phone buzzed. He tapped the screen. Then silence. He stared at his phone as if it had turned into a live grenade. I saw the flicker of realization dawn on him as Evangeline's voice played through the videos. Her tone was arrogant, confused, and pleading. My calm corrections. Her frustrated sighs. She's been lying to you, I said. For 8 months, I've been her tutor. She can't speak Mandarin. Not really. She memorized a script. If anyone asks her anything outside it, the whole thing will fall apart. James was pale. The presentation's in 3 days. I know. And unless you plan to brief your investors that they're about to be pitched by a glorified actress, you might want to rethink who you trust. I took off my glasses, let my hair fall from its bun, and stood tall. My name is Reese Morgan, I said evenly, and as of now, your wife's Mandarin lessons are officially cancelled. I walked out. The next 3 days were chaos. Evangeline left me 7 voicemails. The first was furious. You betrayed me. The second was threatening. You signed a confidentiality agreement, I'll sue. By the third, she was desperate. Please don't ruin this for me. I returned one call. Evangeline, you should reread the agreement. It protects client privacy from outside parties, not from a tutor defending themselves against false professional accusations. You're still fired, she snapped. Yes, I said. And your presentation is tomorrow? Good luck. I hung up, but the knot in my stomach didn't ease. I kept thinking about the investors. I'd worked with many of them. People like Mr. Chen Wei from Beijing Manufacturing, who began every meeting by asking about your parents. Ms. Lu Hong from Shanghai Logistics appreciated when foreigners took the time to learn Chinese etiquette. They were expecting a bilingual liaison, a professional. Instead, they were getting Evangeline Beaumont. At 10 a.m. The day of the presentation, my phone rang. James, Ari, I need your help. I don't work there anymore. The investors are here. Early, they wanted to have lunch before the meeting. Evangeline locked herself in the bathroom. She's panicking. She can't handle casual conversation in Mandarin. I almost laughed. That's not my problem. I'll reinstate you. Promotion, raise anything. Just help us get through this, please. I paused. Then, I'll help, but not for her. For the international division. My former colleagues don't deserve to suffer for her vanity. Done. Thank you and Ree. After today, I promise, you'll never have to deal with Evangeline again. I arrived 45 minutes before the presentation. The main conference room had been transformed into a showcase, high-end catering, Chinese calligraphy art, translated brochures, and cultural gestures woven into every detail. Evangeline was near the windows, whispering to herself, practicing her script. She looked up and saw me. Her face froze. What is she doing here? She hissed. Saving your presentation, I said calmly. Unless you want to handle Q&A alone. She turned ghostly pale but said nothing more. The investors arrived precisely on time. Mr. Chen greeted me in Mandarin. I responded fluidly, welcoming him. We exchanged pleasantries. Miss Lu Hong smiled. You are fluent. Thank you. I lived in Beijing during university. Evangeline joined us and began speaking in her carefully rehearsed phrases. The investors were polite but distant. The contrast between our exchanges and hers was obvious. Shall we begin? Mr. Chen suggested. Evangeline launched into her presentation. She nailed the script, I'll give her that. All those hours of memorization paid off. The tones were decent, the pronunciation passable. If no one interrupted, she might even make it through. Then came the questions. Ms. Lu asked about the timeline for Shanghai distribution. Evangeline blinked. I'm sorry. Lu repeated it. More slowly. Evangeline panicked. Her Mandarin collapsed into gibberish. She looked at me. I said nothing. She tried again. It was worse. Mr. Chen's brow furrowed. Whispers began. He switched to English. Perhaps we continue in English. But the damage was done. They knew. Lu asked another question in English, this time about regulatory compliance. Basic knowledge for anyone in Chinese markets. Evangeline froze. She turned to me. Perhaps my consultant could answer that. I stepped forward and took over. For the next 20 minutes, I carried the entire meeting. I addressed compliance, cultural customs, logistics, and legal barriers. The investors relaxed. They listened. They nodded. Evangelene stood silently by the window. Then came the blow. Mr. Chen. We were told Mrs. Beaumont would be our point of contact, but it seems Miss ... Patterson is the true expert. Who will manage this partnership? Silence. Evangeline looked at the floor. James stepped in. We will clarify that. There may have been confusion. I offered a polite smile. Perhaps it's best to reschedule further discussions until the organizational structure is clear. Mr. Chen nodded. Wise. The investors left, politely, respectfully, but decisively. The conference room felt like a tomb. James sat down heavily. $50 million. Gone. It was never there, I said. You can't build global partnerships on lies. Evangeline finally looked up. You sabotaged me. No. You sabotaged yourself. You pretended to be something you weren't. And when someone refused to play along, you tried to ruin their life. She glared. You're still fired. I laughed. After today, I wouldn't work here if you begged me. 2 weeks later, James called. Again. The board is furious. Several members worked with you. They want to offer you a new position, Vice President of International Business Development. What about Evangeline? She's been removed from all business involvement. Officially, permanently. Then I have conditions. 1. No family members involved in personnel matters. 2. Full authority to rebuild my division. 3. A written apology for my wrongful termination. Done. 6 months later, I closed the Shanghai deal. This time, for $68 million. Evangeline, her reputation was toast. The same people who once admired her Mandarin phrases now laughed behind closed doors. I had climbed higher than ever. All because someone underestimated me. 6 months after the investor disaster, the international division wasn't just back, it was thriving. I had rebuilt the team from the ground up, bringing back former colleagues who'd left after my firing and hiring sharp, culturally fluent talent who understood our global markets intimately. The Shanghai partnership alone had expanded into distribution deals across 4 provinces. Our new total valuation from those partnerships, $68 million and counting. Clients who had once drifted away returned. Not because of our company's name, but because they trusted me. They remembered the negotiations I'd led, the contracts I'd translated, and the cultural respect I'd shown. In a market like China, relationships were everything, and I had nurtured them over the years, not just months. Meanwhile, Evangeline Beaumont had become a cautionary tale. Word about her failed presentation had spread quickly. The upper crust of the city's social and business elite, once mesmerized by her faux fluency, now laughed behind their champagne glasses. The whispers at the country club grew louder, about the memorized scripts, the collapse in front of the investors, and the furious, flushed exit after her mask fell off. She tried to do damage control. She switched tutors. Rumor had it she started learning Spanish next, probably hoping to pivot to a new international deal. But her credibility was gone. Nobody wanted to partner with someone who had humiliated their husband's company on a stage public. I heard she blamed me, told people I had sabotaged her, but there were too many witnesses. The board, the investors, her husband. The narrative she tried to spin unraveled like a cheap knockoff handbag. As for James Morrison, he'd become remarkably cooperative. He kept his word. Evangeline was no longer involved in any business matters. She didn't attend meetings. Her name didn't appear on organizational charts. She became a ghost in the building. One Tuesday morning, I received a meeting invite marked confidential. Executive board discussion. I entered the boardroom with a calm, practiced smile. 7 board members sat around the glossy walnut table. James sat at the head. RE said Olivia Tran, the chairwoman. We'd like to offer you a new role, Senior Vice President of Global Operations. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to hear the full scope. It would mean overseeing all international strategy, Olivia continued. Partnerships, expansions, acquisitions, the whole picture. You'd report directly to the board. It was everything I had ever worked for, except with one caveat, I said. My current title and responsibilities remain protected from internal interference, especially from family members of executives. James nodded before anyone else could speak. You have my full support. I signed the paperwork that day. My new office was 2 floors above James Morrison's, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a panoramic view of the skyline. It overlooked the very city where Evangeline had once tried to erase me with a tantrum and a threat. From my desk, I often saw the rooftop of the hotel where the children's gala had been held. A poetic reminder of how quickly things can turn. The irony wasn't lost on me. Evangeline had tried to bury me for not standing up fast enough. Now I stood taller than ever, while she faded into irrelevance. But what stayed with me most wasn't the promotion. It wasn't even the revenge. It was what I'd learned in the quiet moments between all the chaos. People like Evangeline mistake appearances for power. They think a rehearsed script can replace competence. That dominance is the same as leadership, but the business world has a brutal honesty to it. Eventually, the truth gets revealed, usually when it matters most. I kept my head down and my standards high. I led with clarity and calm. Our Asia-Pacific division became the benchmark. Other departments measured themselves. And when the whispers came about who saved the company, about who rebuilt it brick by brick, they all pointed to one name. Mine. One day, as I was preparing for a summit in Singapore, I received a letter. Thick ivory paper. Elegance cursive. It was from Miss Lu Hong. Re Patterson. We were pleased to learn of your promotion. The professionalism and cultural fluency you displayed during our initial meeting left a lasting impression. We would be delighted to host you in Shanghai later this year. Inside the envelope was a handwritten postscript. Authenticity always outshines pretense. I smiled, because I knew what she meant. It was 8 a.m. on a brisk Monday morning when I stood before a crowd of global stakeholders in Zurich, presenting our company's latest international initiative, a cross-continental logistics and trade alliance that spanned Shanghai, Dubai, Hamburg, and São Paulo. Our firm, once narrowly focused and fractured, had become a key player on the world stage, and I, Reese Patterson, was leading the charge. The applause that followed was thunderous, but I kept my reaction calm. It wasn't pride, I felt it was clarity. Every step I had taken, every betrayal endured, had led to this moment. After the Shanghai rebound, I had spent the next several months traveling to reinforce old partnerships and forge new ones. In every country, our counterparts asked the same thing. Will you personally be overseeing this? When I said yes, the deals clicked into place. The board had given me full control, and I didn't waste it. I restructured the division under 4 regional vice presidents, each fluent in their market's language and culture. I cut dead weight, invested in young talent, and secured our place in Latin America, Southeast Asia, and even emerging African markets. But for all the professional triumphs, something unexpected happened in the background. James Morrison filed for divorce. It came quietly. No drama. No headlines, just a legal notice filed under seal, and whispers in the executive wing. Word was, the failed gala and the investor debacle had been the final crack in an already fractured marriage. Evangeline moved out of their luxury penthouse, reportedly staying with family in Italy to regroup. I felt nothing. That's not true. I felt relief. She wouldn't be in the building. She wouldn't be at galas. She wouldn't be hovering like a ghost every time I walked into a boardroom. But absence doesn't mean silence. 3 months later, just as I was preparing for a keynote at the Global Business Ethics Summit in London, I received an anonymous email with the subject line, "Are you as clean as you pretend to be?" Attached was a grainy screenshot of an old tutoring invoice one I'd submitted under the name Reese Morgan. The sender claimed it proved I had violated corporate policies by hiding dual employment while working full dash time. It was a stretch. Tutoring under a different name wasn't illegal, especially given the non-conflict clause I had negotiated, but I smelled Evangeline's perfume all over the move. She wanted one last swing. The board called a special meeting. I arrived early, armed with documents, legal opinions, and a steely expression that told them I was ready for battle. But when I entered the room, I saw something surprising. James was there. He stood and addressed the board before I could speak. "This attack on Ree's character is baseless and vindictive," he said plainly. "The tutoring occurred during off hours and we had no policy restricting it. I should have defended her 3 years ago. I won't fail her again. The room was quiet. Chairwoman Olivia Tran looked at me. Do you want to respond? I shook my head. He said it all. The vote was unanimous, no action taken. The matter was closed. That night, as I sat in my hotel room overlooking the Thames, I reflected on what had just happened. James had finally stepped up. Not for his wife. For truth. Maybe people can grow. Or maybe he'd finally seen what real leadership looked like and wanted to stand beside it rather than behind it. Months passed. The company soared. I launched a mentorship program to support young women in international business. I traveled less, worked smarter, and made space in my life for something I hadn't felt in years: balance. Then, one day, I received another letter. This one is from an old colleague I hadn't heard from since the early days of the company. Inside was a simple note. What Evangeline tried to take from you, you turned into something better. Not just success, legacy. I stared at the words for a long time because they were right. Evangeline Beaumont had tried to destroy me, but all she did was light the match that burned away my fear and hesitation, and from those ashes, I built something unshakable.